Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call our council meeting for October the 9th, 2014 to order. I'm going to ask if our council member Oles will lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and all that are gathered here. God, we ask for your blessings upon us. Lead us, guide us, give us discernment, Lord, and wisdom, Lord, in the business we're about to conduct. I pray, God, that you bless each and every one here, those serving us, Lord, in this country. Bless our families, all those in need, and those who have less. Lord, let us not take for granted what you give us and the sacrifice you made for us, and may each of us sacrifice every day to serve our people. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to ask Mayor Pro Tem Brinson to please do the introduction of the new employees and the proclamation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome back to full recovery. You know, we were anticipating welcoming these young policemen and firefighters, and I almost challenged them to do 10 push-ups, and one of them suggested that that would be a good deal if you would do 10 push-ups. But, you went back to the hospital just in time. Okay, this is our tradition of welcoming new employees from the Public Works Department, Nelson Bermudez and Yamel R. Waring, both equipment operators. From the Fire Department, Assistant Fire Chief Matthew A. McDowell. Please come forward.
Line up here, fellas.
Benjamin Andrew Brinson. He was the one who wanted to do the 10 push-ups.
Like his daddy, a troublemaker.
Caderick J. Bumper, Alan M. Edwards, Sean R. McGee, Curtis J. Smiley Jr., and David V. Swindler, all new firefighters. From the Police Department, Matthew J. Branham, Police Service Technician. Matt. Victoria L. Buffon, Police Officer. Kyle R. Desidue, Christopher A. Holloway, and Guy R. Van Horn. Again, this is tradition. We welcome you to the employment of our city. And this is a great city in many, many ways. One reason is because of its employees. City government's all about delivering a service. That guy sitting right there, he's the boss. He's everybody's boss. And he's a good boss. We, the members of City Council, as the mayor likes to say, we're here to give you the tools that you need to be successful. You know, if you're joining our Public Works Department, you're getting here just in time for a brand new building. Have you seen this new building? Well, this is a $40 million commitment to good equipment and really good service. This is something special. You'll enjoy working in our Public Works Department. Chief, a special welcome to you, sir. And to each of these young firefighters and our police department newbies, firefighting and police services are, again, the basics of city services. Whether we're talking about our fire department or our police department, very, very professional organizations. We're glad to have each and every one of you. But each and every one of you should understand you're joining very professional organizations. Our police department becoming one of the best in South Carolina. Our fire department, one of the very few with international accreditation. This is special. Welcome aboard.
Dismissed. Y'all can go have dinner now.
Unless Andy wants to do 10 push-ups for us.
Thank y'all very much.
Mr. Astle? Mr. Astle, over the last several weeks, has been researching the subject of this resolution. And you know, this would make a great movie plot. And it's got some familiar characters, or should I say cast members, Ed?
It's not characters.
Here we go.
Oh, I have to read?
Well, you don't have to read
No,
it.
I'll
Just
read it.
tell us the story of
Oh,
Destroyer Evans.
The USS Frankie Evans was an old destroyer from World War II, and back in 1969, she was still serving the country, and she was doing gunfire support off of Vietnam. She got called away to do an exercise with the Australian Navy, which happens quite often. We work together with different navies. Well, unfortunately, she got sliced in half by an Australian aircraft carrier. The front half of the ship was gone in 3 minutes, and it took 74 sailors with it. This proclamation is encouraging the Department of Defense to add these names to the Vietnam Memorial Wall. There's a feeling in the Department of Defense that it wasn't in a combat zone, but they had been, and the ship had been awarded the Vietnam Service Medal. So there are other city councils across the country that are doing this proclamation. encouraging DOD to add these 74 names. And we're very fortunate. We have a survivor of that ship here tonight. And Joe, you want to come up? And that's the story behind the proclamation.
Oh, really? Well, this is a familiar face.
Yes, very familiar.
Would you like me to read that, sir?
Madam Clerk, please.
A proclamation encouraging the United States Department of Defense to include the names of the fallen sailors of the destroyer USS Frankie Evans, DD 754, on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. Whereas on March 29, 1969, the officers and men of USS Frankie Evans departed Long Beach, California for the Western Pacific to carry out the operational orders of their commander-in-chief during a time of war with North Vietnam. And whereas the USS Frankie Evans was providing artillery fire support to combat forces in Vietnam shortly before the operation, and was ordered to participate in an Allied naval SEATO operation called Operation Sea Spirit. And whereas on June 3, 1969, the USS Frankie Evans, while on an Allied naval exercise, collided with the Australian aircraft carrier HMAS Melbourne R-21 in the South China Sea near the coast of Vietnam. And whereas the collision severed the USS Frankie Evans into two sections, with the forward section sinking in less than 3 minutes, taking the lives of 74 American sailors, including Seamen's Assistant Henry Dennis West III of Bowman, South Carolina, who was the sole South Carolina victim. And whereas members of the United States Armed Forces who died during the Vietnam War have been memorialized by placing their names on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C., so long as they died within the combat zone. And whereas the United States Department of Defense maintains that the men who died as a result of the USS Frankie Evans collision do not meet the criteria for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, as the accident occurred outside the combat zone, and therefore continues to deny the placement of the names of the lost 74 sailors on the memorial. And therefore, let it be known that a great injustice continues to prevail by the hand of the Department of Defense by excluding the names of the 74 sailors from the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and that the City of North Charleston urges the Department of Defense to right this long-ignored wrong and take immediate action to include the names of the 74 sailors lost on the USS Frankie Evans, who made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of service to their country to the Vietnam Veterans Memorial.
Ellen, thank you so much. That's pretty special to have her read that, huh? I was just asking him, Mr. Mayor, if he remembered that day, and he said vividly. And I think this is something that all of us can support. Thank you so much for sharing your story and being here with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say?
Good evening. Mayor and City Council members, on behalf of the 74 sailors lost on the USS Frankie Evans on 3 June 1969, I thank you for your support. These men deserve the everlasting honor of inclusion on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And a special thanks to Councilman Ed Astle for sponsoring this proclamation, lest we forget.
Oh, one last thing. Tonight is, for the want of better words, the opening ceremony for the movable Vietnam Memorial Wall. It's going to be over at Patriots Point, I think, for 3 or 4 days. So you want to go long.
Bye, honey.
Thank you. By the way, the gentleman that received is the clerk's better half.
He is.
All right, Madam Clerk.
Thank you very much. I think he's special, too. First item on the agenda is a request to approve the minutes from the September 25th, 2014 City Council meeting.
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds? Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King? Mr. Sigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 2 is the final reading of an ordinance amending the budget ordinance as adopted June 13th, 2013, bearing ordinance number 2013-029.
Move for approval.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 3 is the final reading of an ordinance to sell the property TMS number 411-1500-195.079 acres at 2623 Henry Street Avenue to Miss Rosemarie Watson.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds?
No.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 4 is the final reading of an ordinance authorizing the city to accept title to the property located at 2716 Saratoga Avenue and simultaneously transfer the property to Hive Church for renovation and charitable use in support of the Burns Elementary School.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Items 5 and 6 have been removed by the mayor until we have a full council present.
Which takes us to 7. I flipped too far. 7 is a final reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city of North Charleston and the North Charleston Sewer District to extend sewer service at the Oak Terrace Preserve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 8 is the final reading of an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between the city of North Charleston and the Commissioners of Public Works to extend water service at Oak Terrace Preserve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart? Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 9 is the first reading and a public hearing of an ordinance proposed to zone a portion of the property addressed as 3025 West Montague Avenue, a portion of Charleston County TMS 409-11-00-003 from unzoned former right-of-way to CRD, commercial redevelopment, and amending the comprehensive plan, future land use map for the same portion of the parcel to major business retail.
Good evening, Mayor Summy, members of council. As stated, this proposal is to zone an unzoned portion of the parcel identified as 3025 West Montague, also identified as TMS number 40911, parcel 3, to CRD, commercial redevelopment, as well as give it a comp plan designation of major business retail. The parcel in question is 2.33 acres. Of that, 0.33 acres is being proposed at this time. The parcel was annexed in 1980 and is also a part of Council District 6. These are photographs of the site at the time the property was posted. This is a top view aerial photo of the site. The parcel in question is presently occupied by the Holiday Inn Express and Suites. The area hatched in blue is the area in question that was formerly the Thomasina Gilliard right-of-way. The parcel is adjacent to the West Montague Body Shop. Directly across the street from the site is the market at the market at Montague Strip Mall, and to the rear of the site you have the Lake Palmetto Townhome community. Next, please. This is the existing zoning in the area. With the exception of the former right-of-way, the site is presently zoned CRD. This is the existing comprehensive development plan map. Again, we're trying to designate this area major business retail in support of the CRD designation. In 2010, the city of North Charleston abandoned the right-of-way. When you abandon the right-of-way, all rights-of-ways are unzoned. This proposal before you is just to zone the parcel CRD and to provide a designation of major business retail. Staff recommended approval, and so did Planning Commission.
Any questions by Councilor Gwynn? Hearing none, this is an advertised public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this issue, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us your remarks. Anyone wishing to speak on this issue? Hearing none, without objection, it's referred to the Public Safety Committee, which will meet next Thursday at 5 p.m.
Item, sorry, I'm goofed up here, is 11, is the first reading and a public hearing of an ordinance rezoning the, am I correct?
It was 10.
10.
That is 10. Let's all get on 10. Ordinance and first reading and public hearing of an ordinance rezoning the property addressed as 3615 Ashley Phosphate Road, Charleston County, TMS 397-00-00417 from B2 General Business to M1 Light Industrial, and a concurrent amendment to the Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map for that same parcel from Major Business Retail to Light Industrial.
As stated, this item before you is a proposal to rezone the property identified as 3615 Ashley Phosphate Road from B2 General Business to M1 Light Industrial. The applicant and property owner are one and the same, Kratzer & Kratzer Automotive Incorporated. The parcel is presently 1.33 acres in size. It was annexed in 1973 and is a part of Council District 6. The parcel is also identified as TMS number 39700, parcel 417. This is a photograph of the site at the time the property was posted. This is a top view aerial photo of the site. The parcel in question is presently split into two parcels of land due to the Dorchester County and Charleston County line. The parcel that's in Dorchester County, that parcel is presently occupied by the Ashley Phosphate Automotive and Truck Repair business. And the parcel that's proposed to be rezoned, that's in Charleston County, is presently being used for the parking of that business, as well as they have some accessory use storage buildings on the site. The parcel is adjacent to the mobile gas and convenience station, as well as Truth and Fellowship Outreach building. And then you have the Hillcrest Baptist Church, as well as Stahl High School. Next, please. This is the existing zoning in the area. The parcel in question, again, is zoned B2. It's adjacent to a large M1 zone parcel that is presently occupied by the Stahl High School business, and there's some R2 zoning in the area. Next, please. This is the comprehensive development plan map as it stands now. Staff is recommending a concurrent proposal to amend the comprehensive development plan map, changing the designation from major business retail to light industrial in support of the proposed M1 zoning. The applicant is proposing to rezone that portion of the business because he has a prospective buyer that is interested in establishing a landscaping business at that location, which will require M1 zoning for the parking of his equipment and trucks. The parcel meets the minimum half-acre lot requirement as it is 1.33 acres in size. Again, is adjacent to a large parcel that's presently zoned for M1 light industrial, which has been developed as the Stall High School site. Accordingly, staff believes that the applicant's request is consistent with the surrounding zoning and some of the development within the area. And given the aforementioned reasons, staff recommended approval of the request to rezone, along with a concurrent change to the comprehensive development plan map designating that area for light industrial. Planning Commission concurred as well. It is worth noting that I had at least one applicant one adjacent property owner to call me. That was the Hillcrest Baptist Church. They indicated that they were not able to attend the meeting the night before, but he was in opposition of the proposed rezoning. He didn't leave any further contact information.
All righty. Any questions by council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
Gwen, didn't there used to be a landscape company in that vicinity?
I believe there was
There-
one
there
further
still is.
Down on the left, yes.
Yeah, but it's in the same area. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Any other questions by council? This is an advertised public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this issue, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us your remarks. Anyone wishing to speak on this issue? Hearing none, without objection, is referred to the Public Safety Committee, which meets at 5 p.m. next Thursday.
Item 11 is the first reading and public hearing of an ordinance repealing Section 5-6.1 of the zoning ordinances of the City of North Charleston, as the Maritime Cargo Overlay District has become obsolete.
This item before you is a proposal to repeal Section 5-6.1 of our zoning regulations as it relates to the Maritime Cargo Overlay District Ordinance. In 1995, the City of North Charleston adopted the Maritime Cargo Ordinance regarding certain port uses within the City of North Charleston. However, as a matter of economic development, the state of South Carolina has since expanded port and port-related facilities, thereby rendering this section of our ordinance obsolete. Tonight, this proposal will simply delete that provision of our ordinance and just remove any confusing language left in the ordinance.
Any questions by council? This is an advertised public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this issue, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us your remarks. Anyone wishing to speak on this issue? Hearing none, without objection, it's referred to the Public Safety Committee meeting, which meets at 5 p.m. next Thursday.
We've got 3 first readings for annexations. Do we want to take those?
Yeah, let's pull them together.
Together? Have the attorney give us one report?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Item 12 is the first reading of an ordinance annexing Section 51-R, TMS 172-0802-009, and a portion of Hunters Ridge Lane right-of-way, Dorchester County, City Council District 4. Item 13 is the first reading of an ordinance for the annexation of Section 51S, TMS 412-0400-097, Charleston County, City Council District 5. Item 14 is the first reading of an ordinance to annex Section 51T, TMS 412-0400-117, Charleston County, City Council District 5.
Have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Okay. The motion was to move it to a second reading, and that's when the attorney will report at the second reading.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 15 is a request to approve to the Accommodations Tax Advisory Committee, Mr. Tom Brinkerhoff, Mr. Peter Stackety, Mr. Alice Jones.
Have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Estill?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds? Mr. Hart? Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 16 is a request to approve the reappointment of Mr. Jeff Baxter to the North Charleston Housing Authority Board of Directors for a 5-year term of office ending October 20th, 2019.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Estill?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds? Mr. Hart? Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown? Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 17 is a request to approve the appointment of part-time municipal court judge Stephen Gonzalez for a term of office
Motion and a
of 2
second. Any
years.
discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Did we have this in our budget for this year?
Yes, sir. We had the position.
Yeah, but what about the funding?
To be honest with you, I don't know, but we'll make it. I got 50 on my sleeve. Any other questions? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Estill?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds? Mr. Hart? Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Welcome aboard, Mr. Gonzalez. Glad to have you. Okay.
Item 18 is a request to approve these appointments to the Charleston Naval Complex Redevelopment Authority. The first,
Read the names.
Can I read them?
Read the names, okay.
the first one is a request to appoint Mr. Tommy Myers III to fill Jim Tooten's expired position. The appointment will expire April 24th, 2015. The second one is a request to approve the appointment of Mrs. Debbie Summy to fill Mr. Strock's expired position. This appointment will expire on April 24th, 2017.
I will be abstaining on voting for Ms. Summy since she is my wife. I will say there's no compensation involved in this appointment. I just wish the director and the other board members the best of luck.
Who is the motion and second, please? I missed it.
Who was the motion? Very good.
Thank you. Roll call.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Estill?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Yes. Mr. Olds? Mr. Hart? Mr. King? Mr. Stigler?
If I may split as the mayor did, no for the removal of Jim Tooten, but yes for Mrs. Summy.
I have that. Mayor Summy. Oh, you're abstaining. Mr. Brown? I'm sorry.
Aye.
Oh, my husband was here and it just messed me up.
I was abstaining on Ms. Summy, but voting for Mr. Myers.
I understand. Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you. Number 19 is a request to approve the appointment to the Board of Zoning Adjustments, Mr. Zachary Klosser, with a term with an expiration date of 2/24/15.
Got a motion? Got a second?
Second.
Right. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Estill?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Mr. Olds? Mr. Hart? Mr. King? Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown? Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 20 is a request to approve the appointment to the Planning Commission, Sharon Reed, to fill the unexpired term of Mrs. Montgomery with an expiration date of January 12, 2016.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, the clerk please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson? Aye. Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Stigler?
Aye.
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Item 21 is a request to approve all these people to the Board of Appeals grievance. Would you like me to read them?
Nah, we just included in the minutes, the printed format.
Oh, yes, sir.
These are all employees of the city, just so the public understands. Anytime any punishment is rendered to any employee that removes any compensation from them, they have a right to appeal it. And this is the board that would be chosen from. Nobody from the same department would be allowed to be in on the appeal process. But they can appeal it, and then after the appeal, it comes, if it's different from what was recommended by the staff, the supervisor, then it comes to the mayor for final decision. This is something we initiated probably in 1995 because we didn't have a grievance policy prior to that. But it has worked well, and employees are pretty tough on each other, I'll tell you that.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Astle?
Aye.
Ms. Jerome?
Aye.
Mr. Brinson?
Aye.
Mr. Olds?
Aye.
Mr. Hart?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Stigler? Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mayor Summy.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We have two requests to speak before council. The first is Matisse LeCue. Thank you, Matisse. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and give us your remarks.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Matisse LeCue, and I live at 1606 East Montague, and that's North Charleston, South Carolina, 29405. Okay. And I am the voice for Liberty Hill Improvement Council. We're an ad hoc committee. We were appointed in June of 2014. So we just want to give our position and our response to the Intermodal Transportation Center that's coming. And there are people here from Liberty Hill. I'm not going to ask them to stand to embarrass them, but they're here. The Liberty Hill community is a small, historic, African-American, low-income suburban residential community, as you know, located in the city of North Charleston, South Carolina. Liberty Hill is surrounded by Ferndale and Rivers Avenue to the west, Cameron Terrace, and just east of East Montague, and Park Circle and Durant to the south. The population of Liberty Hill is approximately 1,000 voting-age citizens, representing a diverse age group, gender, race, and professional backgrounds. Amtrak currently operates a single-platform, two-track passenger rail service off of Gaynor Avenue in Liberty Hill that was built in 1956. CARTA now plans to establish a 32,000-square-foot transportation hub at Gaynor Avenue site, which is approximately a 12-acre parcel of land. CARTA believes the new facility will provide connections between local CARTA bus service, Amtrak, Southeastern Stagers, and inner-city buses. CARTA states the purpose of this project is to develop a fully accessible, modern intermodal system serving the Charleston metro area while providing connectivity to other transit alternatives, including Amtrak train service, taxi service, future commuter service options, etc. CARTA has started a series of community meetings with Liberty Hill to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, which is NEPA. CARTA must comply with the NEPA because the international facility is funded through grants by the Federal Transit Administration. Under the NEPA process, CARTA is required to analyze the direct and indirect impacts of the intermodal project on the community, which includes ecological, aesthetic, historic, cultural, economic, social, or health impacts, whether adverse or beneficial. NEPA requires these impacts to be based on factors such as air quality, noise, pollution, hazardous waste, aesthetic values, community cohesion, economic vitality, employment effects, displacement of persons or businesses, farms accessibility, traffic congestion, relocation impacts, safety and construction and temporary impacts, etc. The Liberty Hill Improvement Council wants to ensure that Carter has conducted an adequate investigation into the factors listed above to determine the severity of the harmful impacts on the community. Therefore, Liberty Hill believes it will be disproportionately affected by the facility compared to the overall North Charleston area. Moreover, Carter has not identified or offered a meaningful mitigation plan to remedy the potential environmental injustice concerns to the community. Committee findings and observations. First one is traffic congestion, air, water pollution, noise, odor, and particulate matter and safety. And I'm not going to read that because it's very long. The second one is aesthetic values and community cohesion. And the third is economic and employment opportunities. Summary. The economic impact of this proposed project is presumed to be large. However, as per Carter's presentation at the recent community meeting at the Danny Jones Recreational Center, the adjacent Liberty Hill community, except for noting the traffic count on Gaynor Avenue, was not addressed. Failing to acknowledge that this proposed facility development and operation will affect the Liberty Hill community does not change the fact that this community will be adversely affected, as evidenced by some of the above concerns. Thus, as stakeholders, we believe the expansion of the current Amtrak station to a 32,000 square foot transportation intermodal facility will greatly diminish our quality of life. In addition, we believe the facility will violate our civil rights because it will subject our community to disproportionately high and adverse environmental effects and contravention of the environmental justice laws. Therefore, we are adamantly opposed to and against the location of the intermodal facility at the Liberty Hill community. And this is respectfully submitted by the Liberty Hill Ad Hoc Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Could you leave a copy of that with the clerk?
I can.
Thank you very much. Our next request to speak.
Thank you.
They're supposed to be having another public meeting. It will be our third. They have not established a date yet. I spoke with Mr. Brock today, and he said he would let me know when they're going to meet. Pardon? Yeah, we plan to present the same information to them too. You do? But we wanted our representatives for our Liberty Hill community, you and Mr. Hart, to know. For public record, for the record, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Our next person to speak is Stephen L. Shepard, Sr.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilman, my name is Stephen L. Shepard. I'm a resident of the city of North Charleston. I live at 9431 Coster Avenue in Latson, in the city of North Charleston. Okay? I would like, this is a twofold thing here. I would like to commend the North Charleston Fire Department on the outstanding work that they did on April the 1st of this current year. And in doing this, I would like to tell a story, Mr. Mayor, if you don't have an objection to this. April the 1st, I was working and I was at Dorchester and Montague, received a phone call that my wife had fallen in the house and I needed to come home. Upon arriving at home, approximately after 11, I found my wife lying on the bed. She was incoherent. I decided that we needed to transport her to the hospital. I dialed 911. Exactly, and I headed home. I came up Dorchester Road to Patriots to Palmetto Commerce Parkway. When I turned on the Palmetto Commerce Parkway, there's a new fire station right down there on the left. The fire truck, ladder 12, was sitting in the front of the station with its ladder in the air, the cab open. So they were doing something with the truck. When I got to my house, I decided to dial 911. I did. I told them I needed EMS at my house. Exactly 6 minutes later, North Charleston Fire Department arrived at my house. They had to park on Costa Road and walk down my driveway because they can't get that ladder truck to my house, okay? 6 minutes. EMS didn't show up for 13 and a half. Both of them are the same distance from my house. Fire department came in, they assessed my wife. They did a daggum good job. They took her vitals, they did everything. 6 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, with the ladder in the air and the cab open. They were at my front door. 13 and a half minutes later, EMS came to my house. Because there's never a truck on Latson on 78. That truck is always gone. They showed up there. They talked to the fire department. Fire department told them what they did. They said, we're going to transport them. Would you go get me a backboard? The fire department went outside, got the backboard. The fire department placed my wife on the backboard. The fire department placed the backboard on the stretcher. All very professional. Very, very professional. The fire department carried my wife on the stretcher outside. The fire department put my wife on the stretcher in the back of the ambulance. The next question that was asked to me, does your wife have a driver's license and an insurance card? I said, yes. So I gave it to him. Fire department helped him turn the ambulance around. On the way, I said, aren't you going to run your red lights and siren? EMS said, no, it's not that much of an emergency. Okay? But remember, the most important thing here is the fire department only took 6 minutes with a ladder in the air and a cab open to get to my house. That is outstanding on basis of the fire department. And I want to commend them and have it known and placed in the record that they did a daggum good job. Outstanding. Okay? Now I'm going to finish this up, Mr. Summey, if you don't mind. As we were going to the hospital, I said, aren't we going to run red lights and siren? They said, no, it's not that much of an emergency. All they did was put a 12-lead EKG on my wife and start an IV. Don't know why, okay? They said, we can run 74 miles an hour because my truck is governed at 74 miles an hour. We get down to the crosstown, traffic's backed up, they still don't turn their lights and siren on. Get to the hospital, they back up, we get out, they take my wife inside, and I lost 3 days of my life because I don't know where they went. Because the doctors came out and told me to go get my affairs in order because my wife wasn't going to survive the night. Needless to say, Charleston County EMS said it was not an emergency. The doctors told me my wife wasn't going to make it. Okay? She stayed in the hospital. She's still in the hospital. She has 5 brain bleeds in the top of her head. Her center line has shifted. She has no peripheral vision. And then they diagnosed her with leukemia. Okay? I would like y'all to look into this thing with Charleston County EMS because I spoke before the county council the other night. Ladies and gentlemen, they have mandated, Charleston County EMS has mandated that there will always be 2 trucks available in the city of North Charleston. They bring them from the West Ashley, they shut them down from the West Ashley station, bring them to the city of North Charleston. They shut them down from station 15, which is in Latson, which a lot of the property up there is in North Charleston. They shut it down and they bring it down to here to reduce the time on responding to calls in the city of North Charleston, just like they take them over to East Cooper to shorten the time, because they know that this great fire department is now getting paramedics, they're getting QRVs, and they're scared that you're going to take their business. Okay? And on top of all this, 3 weeks after my wife was at the hospital, I get a $552 bill from Charleston County EMS for transporting my wife to the hospital. And all they did nothing. They did nothing. The fire department did every dad-blame bit of it except drive the truck to the hospital. Transportation fees, a transportation fee of over $300 to drive her to the hospital. Now let me back up here. 1968, I was a captain at James Island Fire Department. Back in those days, we were the only one that had an ambulance. Charleston County Police Department had crash wagons. Mayor Summy, I know that you are aware of that. You got thrown in the back of a police crash wagon and transported to the hospital if you got sick. James Island Fire Department had an ambulance. I think it was 1972 or somewhere around there. Paul Delegatus came to us and asked us to help him form Charleston County EMS. We never charged anybody to transport them to the hospital off of James Island, Folly Beach, or Johns Island, okay? We transported a lot of people. We put Paul Delegatus in the front seat of our ambulance, put Channel 5 in the back seat with a camera, and we ran red lights from James Island to the county hospital, and it took a lot of time because they wanted to see it doing that rush hour both ways. Ladies and gentlemen, Charleston County EMS is broke. They're shutting trucks down because they've gone to a 12-hour shift. If you work 12 hours, you can work to 15 hours and 45 minutes, and then that truck is shut down. That truck cannot respond, period. So they pull them from the outside counties, outside the downtown area. They shut Station 15 down. Just the other day, they shut Medic 1 down in the busiest part of the city of Charleston. They've also shut Medic 4 on James Island down. The other night, I had a long conversation with North Charleston City Council, Charleston County Council. They've got a deputy administrator over there that's supposed to be looking into it. The problem is they were paying medics $92,000 a year because they were working overtime. That's not our problem as citizens of Charleston County. That's Charleston County's problem, okay? If they can't manage the EMS service, give it to the fire departments who can handle it, who do a dadgum good job. And I want to commend the chief and his people for becoming EMS certified, paramedic certified, and responding in these QRV vehicles to help the cities of North Charleston get their people taken care of, okay? I'm sorry I get a little emotional, but my wife is still in the hospital, and ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if she's gonna make it, okay? So this thing is broke. I think North Charleston could become a model program for EMS because they have a bunch of really, really good professional men and women in that department, okay? Mayor, I appreciate you affording me the opportunity to speak to y'all at this time, but it sure is daggum good, sir, to be retired.
Tell them where you retired from, Steve.
I retired from the City of North Charleston Police Department as a sergeant with North Charleston Police Department. I've got 32 years in law enforcement and 6 years in fire department service, and it's very good to be retired, especially from the City of North Charleston. And may I ask one other thing, if y'all don't mind? Please keep my wife in your prayers. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Steve. Anything else to come before the body? Hearing nothing, meeting's adjourned.